Hey kids, howdy, welcome once again. It's time for Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. We are rounding down the month of March, kids. And in some ways, this last week is the juiciest. We'll get to that in a minute. I actually have two questions that came in I wanted to do today. One is really simple and cute, and it's about me, my favorite topic. So I thought it would be an interesting question to answer. Sylvie writes, thank you so much as always for your teachings. I have a question about you, actually. Do you find it difficult to stay in the present day energy? You record this podcast a week or so ahead of time. You prepare your daily astral alerts a day ahead of time, and you're always looking ahead to see what's coming, which we are very grateful for. Just wondering how you stay present to that particular day's energy. Thank you, Sylvie. I love this question, and no one has ever asked me that before, but I literally I live in a kind of weird challenge with that in the last couple of years. So Sylvie has it exactly right. The podcast is recorded a week in advance. I'm writing monthly forecasts a month in advance. Once a month, I talk about the month. Every day, I'm writing about the next day. And then in the morning, I'm doing a video about the day, but I'm basing that on my previous day's writing. So the fact is, like, if you ask me right now, hey, Michael, where is everything? I would not really be able to tell you. There are a bunch of contributing factors to that. One is the disorganized way that every day I'm looking at different time frames. Second is I have really profound ADHD, and even though I'm medicated for it now, long COVID has made... The long COVID is gone, kids, so I don't have long COVID as I did, but my body has changed, my brain has changed, and one of the things that is true is my ADHD is more assertive in my day-to-day experience. So from the disconnected schedule, my challenge with keeping details in my mind, I never know where things are, ever, unless I sort of stop and look or think about it for a moment or check in with my computer. But here's the thing. I live in a lot of energetic sensitivity because I've cleared out the inside landscape from wound and stress that was added to me. I have a deep, abiding practice that's daily that keeps me aligned with the day's energy. So from my body's perspective, my body is fully in the energy each day in a way that I feel and can work with. And I never really have to check in and look at what's happening unless I feel confounded in the day and can't understand why I'm feeling a certain kind of way. And then I'll go look. But the older and wiser and clearer I become, the more directly I experience the general astrology that I describe day to day. And since my body knows what to do with the energy, my mind doesn't really have to know. So we have another question from Anne, who writes, hey, Michael and Zoe, I'm an avid listener to your podcast. Since Mars just wrapped up his retrograde and we are heading into Venus and Mercury retrogrades, it got me wondering about why planets retrograde. I understand retrogrades are a time for reviewing, revisiting, and revising themes in our lives connected to the specific house they are transiting, but is there a specific reason why planets retrograde other than that? It is so fascinating that planets move backwards in degrees, and I was curious, is there a more detailed reason for it? I hope this question makes sense to you. Appreciate you both, Anne. Why I like this question is it gives me the opportunity to sort of talk about one of the best ways to work with transiting planets to have an understanding of the meaning or the impact of the different energies. We anthropomorphize and talk about the why from an archetypal perspective. So I'll start here. The why, from an archetypal perspective, is this need to review, especially with regard to the personal planet retrogrades. And if you've been listening to me a while, you know I don't give a shit about the other ones, because the personal planet retrogrades give each of us at an individual level the very much needed opportunity to turn within, to do some work on perceptions and thinking, love and intimacy and finances, or how you relate to choices, action, and your body. So by anthropomorphizing, say, Mercury, for this example, Mercury in Aries is saying, I'm ready to take on the fires of like what we want to talk about and perceive. But he's going to retrograde back into Pisces. And so the why there would be the planet of communication says, I'm too angry. I need more love, forgiveness, compassion, and a sense of connection to oneness before I get out there and fight the fight. So all of the why is in the interpretation. The why of how they happen or why they happen in the movement of the planets is just a principle in physics. Whenever you have two bodies in motion, they both have to be in motion, and you have a relativity from one of those bodies, meaning we have to be on one of the moving bodies. There's just a thing that happens in the physics of movement that creates what looks like a loop in the sky. It's a complete optical illusion. And the why that happens is one planet overtakes the pace of us on Earth, or we overtake the pace of another planet because it's slowing down energetically. And it's all optical illusion. There's nothing real about it at all, though it would look that way if you were looking up at the sky and watching the planet night by night. You'd see it stop. You see it loop back around its orbit and continue on. But there's no actual backward movement, and there's no why that it happens from a technical perspective outside of this illusion happens with all moving bodies. You can actually kind of see this in action when you're in a car, which is a moving body, and another car passes you by. If you're looking out from the passenger seat at the wheels of that spinning car, a lot of people have seen this in their life, and they go, oh my God, I've seen that. I know what you mean. There's this moment where if you look at the hubcap of the other car, the wheels for just a second will look like they're spinning backwards. And then it's like, oh, that was just an illusion. It's gone.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
But that's retrograde motion. Like, that's not even an analogy, Zoe.
Yeah.
It's an extrapolation. It's happening with the two cars, and it's happening with the two planets, we being one of them on Earth, that we are moving and other planets move, and there are these overtaking moments in terms of direction, velocity, etc., that causes the optical illusion. Mm-hmm. But it's in the interpretation of it, which I always describe as the planet visiting your unconscious, where all the juicy change can happen, such that when the retrograde is over, we feel different. This is a juicy week of traffic.
More so than what's already been happening?
Oh,
or
yeah, unfortunately, so I have to say yes, because the traffic at the end of the week over the weekend includes our next eclipse and cue the intense background music, Neptune moving into Aries. So we'll get there at the end of the
All right.
podcast, but we're going to start with today and the inferior conjunction of Mercury in retrograde with the sun. So the sun and Mercury are never far apart from each other because he's so close to the sun and has a very fast orbit. As such, Mercury will regularly appear to conjunct the sun all year long, every 2 months or so, because that's how fast his orbit is. We call this the inferior conjunction when Mercury is retrograde because Mercury is in front of the sun. In between the Earth and the sun is Mercury. When Mercury is not retrograde, he's still in a regularity of a cycle that's like 2 months of retrograde, 2 months what I call free and clear. And in the 2 month free and clear portion of Mercury's movement, he also meets up with the sun on the other side. We call that the superior conjunction. Now, conscious awareness and thinking are not the same thing. This is one of the reasons why I love astrology, is because understanding that will make you more powerful in how you move through life. When you understand that who you are in the essence and the center of you and who and what you know yourself to be is the sun corollary, and then your navigating, thinking, perception mechanism is your thoughts. That's Mercury. So it's really important, back to that way we answered the question, like anthropomorphizing the movement of the planets. It's a really powerful moment when Mercury is retrograde, meaning in the below, not quite up in our minds. So we're bumping into furniture and we don't really know what's happening in our unconscious with regard to changing perceptions and thought patterns. And then smack dab in the middle, exactly halfway between the turnaround and the end of the retrograde, this meeting happens, precise like clockwork. It's today. So what we want to do today is pay attention to everything from the neck up. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow might offer you some really important like aha moments or insights that relate to what's going on below the surface of your consciousness. And I'll say this, I don't know that I've ever been disappointed by looking for it, right? Sometimes it's really tiny and subtle. It's a conversation I have or a thought that just passes through my head that is bigger than a typical thought, right? So if you hear this and you look for the billboards, you might not see it. But if you look for the happy accidents and the synchronicities and the trickstery ways that Mercury communicates to you, you might get some interesting information as the week starts. And if you know your chart, it's 4 degrees of Aries is the location of this. And so the house that 4 degrees of Aries sits in might be the area of your life where the aha might take place. But it's a good idea to pay attention to everything and receive whatever messages might be there for you as we start this week.
So that's one retrograde. We have 2 other retrogrades.
And all of
currently
them
happening.
are playing out a little bit this week. In fact, Tuesday tomorrow is also a Mercury triple transit. I love this.
That's
having
a
them
lot.
come together. Well, it is a lot, but it's valuable. So
Okay.
let's talk about Tuesday's sextile to Pluto. This would be the nugget of the capacity to transform thoughts, perceptions, and, mental patterns that need adjusting, because Pluto brings change at the molecular level. A sextile is potential energy only. So when this hit back on March 5th, if you were putting some effort in that first week in March to look deeper at something, to allow for powerful conversations to happen, there might be a connection to this week tomorrow with what was going on early March around the 5th. There'll be a third hit in the third week in April, right? So this is a theme in the retrograde. But because Mercury is backwards now, it's deeper in its capacity to help us transform either how we're thinking and perceiving or transform something about our lives through a conversation. Talk of change, talk of transformation might be prominent early this week. What I love about the proximity of it is that today's energy gives us the aha, and then Tuesday's energy takes us to an even deeper place of aha or knowing or awareness. So allow for that as we move through tomorrow. So here we go, Zoe. It's Wednesday. It's Mars's turn. And guess whose turn it is on Thursday?
Venus?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a lot to talk about Venus. It's very complex. Lots happening like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So let's come back to Wednesday. Wednesday is the square between Mars and Chiron. So the Mars retrograde, for me, it was fucking brutal. But that was personal, right? It was conjuncting my North Node, squaring my natal Mars for 4 weeks. But I have heard from so many people about lack of energy, headaches, physical challenges, more illness than is typical, difficulty in motivating. Now, Mars is thankfully moving a little faster than he was. You know, he's going about 15 minutes of space a day. That's this is slightly more than half his regular speed. So I want to say to all of y'all who are feeling sluggish, that might still be continuing to be a sensation you grapple with because Mars is not quite moving. But one of the big, and I think challenging triple transits was this square to Chiron because Chiron is the healer. Mars is the body. Squares are like, being knocked down, put on the surgeon's table and, having your kidney stolen. So like that's Wednesday. You want to look back to mid-October. October 13th was the first day that this transit hit. The second time it hit was early February, February 3rd. Now, because Mars is in his, what we call direct shadow, he's in his final wrap-up, right? So this energy this week, along with all of this traffic, all of these retrograde cycles crossing, and an eclipse and a outer planet changing signs, that's like a shit show of energy. I think it's important to dissect on Wednesday what your body's experience is, what your Mars experience is, right? Because otherwise you might get lost in the week of wild energy. The eclipse will be amplifying all week so that every day that passes, we're going to feel a little more intensely because of the rumble of the eclipse and Neptune's ingress that's coming. But pay attention to what your body is telling you midweek, what work is expressing, how you're relating to discipline with projects and goals that are important to you. How's your health? How's your attendance to health in a self-care kind of way? All of the things I just mentioned are potential consciousness of Mars in Cancer squaring Chiron. As ever, don't try too hard to draw the picture between October 13th and February 3rd. If it's not obvious, it's not worth your attention. Don't let your head get too involved when what you want to do is let your body tell you what you're feeling. Okay, now Thursday. I'm laughing because it's like
Thursday is Venus.
Well, Thursday's Venus, and she's doing two things. One is she's returning to Pisces in her retrograde. Now, there's something interesting about Venus and Mercury right now in that they are joined up They're dancing together. Venus moves into Pisces on Thursday, and Mercury does it next week. It's interesting to me that Venus is unhappy in Aries and delighted in Pisces, and it's the opposite for Mercury. Mercury is fine in Aries. It's a natural place for him to just fly, and the water is too deep in Pisces. But if you blur your vision for a moment, it just sort of, like, I don't know how to say this in words, but I can give you the abstract sense of there's something powerful about the heart learning how to be more assertive in Aries because it dips back into Pisces to connect to more love.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow Mercury, and I'll talk about this next week, and we'll see what I have to say about this next week. It's just interesting to me that he's demanding to go back into Pisces, even though he doesn't like it there. And anthropomorphizing it, I would say it's because Venus is insisting. She's just insisting that there be more love, more compassion, more empathy. And it's her drop into Pisces on Thursday that sort of sets up this powerful sense of rebirth from Pisces into Aries that this whole first half of the year is all about. So I'm going to talk about Neptune at the end of the podcast because that's Sunday, and that's a very big deal. But the big deal that it is really about the birth canal between Pisces and Aries, where we're creating a new way of meeting the world on its own terms through our body, heart, and mind transforming through retrogrades. So what Venus is doing on Thursday is not only moving back into Pisces, saying, I need to connect to forgiveness, love, and empathy more so I can meet the fight that's coming. She's going to conjunct Neptune because Neptune's at the very tail end of Pisces right now. So that means not only do we have the sign change on Thursday that we might feel energetically, we have one of the triple transits and the one that is most about putting your spiritual practice first because your heart tells you, I cannot function in this world out there unless my heart has the love of the divine fully in it. This was happening energetically on February 1st and this Thursday. And then in early May, there'll be a third and final hit. That third and final hit will be in the sign of Aries. So if you look at Venus's whole cycle, in consideration of this rebirth that I keep talking about, we have Venus's recommitment to being aligned with spirit Thursday, connecting to February 1st. And when we get to mid-spring, by virtue of Venus and Neptune conjuncting for a third and final time in Aries, then we see what Venus's intentions were the whole time. She really said, I easily connect to love, forgiveness, and empathy in Pisces, but how am I going to do that in Aries? She moves into Aries and says, fuck, I got to go back there. But by early May, something has shifted within us that will allow Venus in Aries and Neptune in Aries to conjunct a third and final time on May 2nd that will, at least archetypically and theoretically, deliver us all at the individual level, ready to fight for what our heart's desire is, but with more compassion, empathy, and forgiveness than we would have otherwise had we not gone through this complicated retrograde cycle. Now, when I was doing the outline for today's podcast, I noticed that there was something major on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday and Sunday. So I was like, well, what about Friday? Friday must have something to talk about. And in fact, it does, because Friday's the day that the moon is going to cross the birth canal of the zodiac for the first time since the sun did it with the equinox. Right? So every layer of Pisces to Aries is another iteration of this mad rebirth we're in. So at the equinox, it was the sun, right? So we talked all about that last week, about our conscious awareness got a hint about what it is to drag the yummier unifying elements of Pisces into the what would otherwise be the separatist energy of Aries. You know, Aries is I am. I'm separate. We don't give a shit about the oneness in Aries.
Individual.
We're off to the races, right? But we want to make that different now. We don't want to just be in Aries energy on fire. We want to make sure we're bringing the water with us. So the moon is doing this on Friday. And I think it's interesting because there are, on Friday, a couple of planets of Pisces and a couple of planets in the beginning of Aries. On Friday, the moon will touch them all by conjunction. So that's another unconscious rebirth, right? Sun last week, moon on Friday, Neptune on Sunday. Saturday is wild. So in the wee hours, pretty early on, around 3:47 a.m. Pacific time, we have the new moon partial solar eclipse. So it's our second eclipse, which means we're still fully in eclipse season and the wormhole. This is a new moon, which kind of means the whole lunar cycle ahead is an eclipse cycle. I mean, granted, the full moon of that cycle is no longer an eclipse, but the whole 28-day process starts with an eclipse. So you can consider the 4 weeks that begin with that new moon eclipse to be kind of intense just from the amplified energy that eclipses bring. But just as Venus did earlier in the week, this is the day that Mercury retrogrades back into Pisces, conjuncting Neptune. So let's try to break all of this down in a succinct way so you can work with the energy of the eclipse on Saturday. Firstly, the new moon in Aries is always the sort of energetic kickoff of the year. So certainly the equinox is when we start the astrological new year. That's the moment when in the Northern Hemisphere, day and night are of equal lengths. That's the moment. That's the zero Aries reset moment. But the new moon, when the moon joins the sun, would be the first moment that our unconscious is participating the process of starting things up. As such, it's a perfect new moon to set your intentions for the year ahead. Think about Aries and how you relate to both the sign of action, and if you know your chart, where does 8 degrees of Aries fall, and what house in your chart is ruled by Aries. You know, with the new moon being in an early degree, you might have the lunation falling inside of a house, but also lighting up the next house. So that means both areas of your consciousness need to be considered. From this place of activation that I've been talking about, that we steep in the waters of love and forgiveness in order to get activated out there in a world that needs us all participating in the changes that are happening, this would be a great new moon to really think about who you want to be in the world as it goes through the wild changes that the rest of the year is going to bring. It has never been more important for your personal manifestation desires and intentions have to be set up as service to humanity on some level. I was going to say, or blah, blah, blah will happen. There's no blah, blah, blah will
There's
happen.
no other.
Right? Right. There is no or else.
Yeah.
But if you're following me for a reason, right? There are lots of other astrologers you could be following who would be talking about this in a different way. I cannot hold back from what I think is going to be the wildest ride of our lives. And while I knew the summer was going to be hot, January, February, and March has proven everything to be amplified at a much higher level than I was imagining, which means it's really going to be fucking hard, kids. But I believe in our resilience and our ability to rise up and help cause change and participate in it in a more individualized way. Aries is the energy of the individual. He is the I am of the zodiac. So it's not I am, but not you. What's lovely about that is that you, Zoe, you're in your I am, but not me, right? That's the stunning way that consciousness works, right? Every single person has an entire universe within them.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. In fact, there's a word. I can't remember what it is. I shouldn't be bringing this up, but there's a word that describes an urban consciousness of the moment when a person realizes that every person that they see has a whole universe that they carry with you. And it's considered a crisis moment. I should look that up. I shouldn't have brought it up. But like, that's the beauty and the challenge. It's overwhelmingly chaotic and frightening, and it's now on fire. But we are really all one and all connected. So we let this eclipse allow us to set intentions to participate both in the world at large and in your own desires for what you want to have set up. And then before the day is done, our mind dips back into Pisces. Now, from a practical standpoint, for all the time that Mercury's in Pisces, communication is going to be challenging because he hates it here. It's too much vastness for the precision that Mercury operates with. And so since he'll be retrograde for another little bit, certainly things are going to get more retrograde-y as a result of him moving back into Pisces. But I want you guys to all be holding this archetypally because it means that our mind and our perception, which is not as adept at love, forgiveness, and empathy as our hearts are, Venus, that we're going back into Pisces for a purpose. Venus is beckoning our minds back in so that we might learn more love, forgiveness, empathy, and compassion in our perceptions. So that when we move out in the world and are perceiving other people who have different views, that perhaps we have a little more compassion in the mix to soften the intensity of the fire that's driving us all, or will be driving us all. So there's a beautiful importance to it. Of course, what Mercury will do, just like Venus did, the first thing is conjunct Neptune. So look back to March 2nd, when Mercury first gathered with Neptune, perhaps creating a kind of dive into a spiritual sensibility. Just look back to, the first, second, and third of March and see if there's any connection to this weekend in terms of theme, because there'll be yet another hit in mid-April when he wraps the cycle up. And of course, that conjunction happens in Aries too, right? So mind and heart are diving back into Pisces, connecting with our deepest spiritual connection, and then they'll all meet up again in the fires of Aries as the spring continues. Last, but certainly not least, is the first major outer planet hit since Pluto moved into Aquarius. The ingress happens at 5 a.m. Pacific time. So as most of us wake up on Sunday, we're waking up to a very new energy. When outer planets change signs, there's usually big world events that reflect the change. You know, when Pluto was doing it in Aquarius, there were wild technological advancements happening. When Uranus did this a bunch of years ago into Aries, that oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico blew up.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so there's always going to be some noticeable collective experience. And so there might be some world events that arise as we move into the month of April because of this planetary shift. Neptune has been in Pisces, the sign that he rules, since 2011. One of the beautiful artifacts of him being in that sign is that we've all had the opportunity to deepen our spiritual connections. I noticed changes right away because I was active in my teaching business. And I was doing a lot of dream work at that time. And the minute the planet that rules dreams moved into the sign that rules dreams, questions and workshops got deeper. People showed up differently in the world of dreaming because this shift had changed things. So it's likely that I'll be talking about this a lot over the next months because part of the year's dynamic setup is Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries, and then later in the spring, Uranus in the air sign of Gemini. It's a lot of air and fire, so we might blow up this summer, and it kind of starts now.
Oh, and that's kind of what you've been saying. The summer's going to be kind of
Summer's
big
going
and
to be
active.
hot and heavy, but I also have to sort of reformulate how I'm perceiving this first ingress because of how crazy January and February and March were. Right? So I have to up the ante of what I'm predicting because like Saturn semi-squaring Pluto at the end of January, I thought was just going to be like a squeeze of frustrations around change. But you remember January?
Yeah.
The level of change and the level of frustration was beyond what I imagined
Yeah.
when I thought about the year astrologically. So I have to up the ante of what I think we can expect in April and May from this shift of the planet that rules and governs our spiritual connection, our beliefs, our ideologies, and our creative inspirations. That's all going to be on fire.
Mm.
The value will be in especially the creative inspiration part and all of the yummy ways that Neptune connects us to valuable places in our psyche, like our imagination and the place where ideas emanate from. If you've been struggling with your spiritual practice, I'll bet you lots of people will be able to dive on to Neptune and Aries to fire up and start a deeper connection vis-a-vis a practice. Mm-hmm. And the shadow of this is going to be people ready to fight for their beliefs and their ideologies. So if we've already seen that happening, and I'm thinking specifically of the United States here, but war is happening elsewhere. If we thought January and February and March were difficult around ideological divides and violence, as of Sunday, it's going to get more intense.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry to deliver the bad news, but
I don't feel cut out for this.
Well, you know, what's funny is I still feel like I don't fearmonger and that I offer hope, but I can't soft soap it. I can't pull back and say it's something that it isn't going to be.
Sure. Yeah. Wow.
You know? So I'll leave you all with this, kids. I believe in us. I believe in resilience. I believe in our capacity to change the world. And most importantly, I believe in the age of Aquarius. Now, I may not live to see it being smooth and graceful as we turn the age. But I trust that there's peace for humanity out there. But we do have to go through some fires first.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. Today we have an email and dream from Anna. And she says, "Dear Dr. Lennox and Zoe, I had a very fantastical dream the other night that seemed rich in symbolism. I'd love your take. In the dream, I was watching two men hanging a net, almost like a soccer net, from a wooden arch in the middle of what appeared to be a wide open landscape, like farmland. Suddenly, a sheep jumped into the net and got his front legs caught. I lifted him up so he wasn't dangling. I detangled his feet and set him on the ground in front of me. He looked up at me and defecated, but not just normal sheep manure pellets. They looked like magical beads or seeds, almost like bejeweled pomegranate seeds."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I know. At first, I was worried about stepping in them because I was barefoot. But then my attention turned to a woman who seemed to suddenly appear and who was communicating with me, maybe telepathically, since I don't remember her mouth moving. She said that she planted the seeds, meaning the sheep manure, and they grew into a fruit tree. She opened her hands to show me fruit skins and peels and said I didn't have to worry, that she ate all of the fruit from the tree and the curse is now broken.
Ooh.
I know, right? That's when I woke up. I'm curious to hear what you make of this. And on a broader note, thank you so much for all you do. I started listening to your podcast, and dream interpretation has become a hugely rich source of personal insight and therapeutic work. All the best, Anna.
Oh, God, Anna. First of all, thank you for that last piece, because that's what I'm trying to have happen out there. It's such a powerful way to have insight into self because they're inside of us. Dreams exist inside of us. Back to what we were talking about earlier about everybody has a universe inside of them, and we each get to go to sleep and visit, the universes beyond. Oh, my God, this is a good dream. I think I kind of want to start at the end.
Okay. Of the
right?
Fruit skins and
everything about that, because it's so, not to be like dad jokey, it's so juicy.
Yeah.
So I'm very struck by the pomegranate piece.
Specifically, not just it's a fruit, but the
specifically
pomegranate.
that it's pomegranate. It could be any other fruit, but pomegranates are womb shaped.
Yes.
And they are considered in the world of symbolism to be deeply feminine and about the power of the feminine principle. In fact, in my Finding Your Voice class, which I've been teaching just now, we just finished the class, I talk a lot about the sort of the recapitulation of imagery between foods and the body. Like if you cut open a carrot, it looks like an iris, and the nutrition of carrots is good for the eyes. You open up a walnut, it looks like a brain,
Yeah,
and
good
it's
for the
good brain
brain.
food, right? So the pomegranate as womb-shaped and considered symbolically to create, to connect to the juiciness of the capacity to create and have passion and to take a deep, rich bite out of life. The translations of the Bible don't specifically say apple, it's fruit. And there's a lot of discussion in academic circles that a pomegranate might have been the fruit.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So now I'm not a biblical scholar and I don't know the extent to this, but I can speak with authority that there is, in fact, thoughts about pomegranate connecting to Adam and Eve. And I did that, right? So here's where it's like interesting to have the dreamer not with us, right? Because, it's Anna's dream.
Right.
So if I have a response to something that feels like it's coming from my experience, I have to be mindful of that. Though the power of the collective is that we can dream of things that exist in the collective that we don't have any knowledge of, and it counts. The dream starts, though, with two men, and the dreamer is a woman. And what are the men creating? They're creating something that like blocks or stops. Now, I get that it is that net that allows Anna to see the sheep and the sheep shit.
Mm-hmm.
But from an image perspective, two men creating a net looks to me like patriarchy, creating obstacles
Okay, I didn't think
and
about that.
blocks
Yeah.
to things. Now, I hate to contradict myself and make this more confusing. It is accurate that she does say it looks like a soccer net. And then we have another thought of if I get something into that net, if I kick my ball into the net, I've won.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to hold both, right? That Anna is dreaming about a world in which the patriarchy creates obstacles, but that it's ultimately like a game. And that if she plays the game sort of true from her heart, there's this thing that happens in the dream state. Rather than it being a soccer ball that she kicks into the net, it's this sheep. So now we're in a medicine dream.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what the sheep means.
Sheep, lambs, in symbolism, in animal medicine would be about gentleness and innocence and purity. I'm going to even make the connection, since we've been talking about the love and compassion and empathy of Pisces. The lamb is a Piscean Christian symbol, but we also used to sacrifice them. Back in patriarchal days where we would sacrifice animals, killing a sheep at the altar would have been a big way to honor the masculine god. But we're in a feminine god place. We don't need a masculine god anymore. We will fail in our capacity to be here if we don't dismantle the masculine patriarchal mess that we're in. So then I get this sort of like sense of Anna seeing the potential obstacle, but allowing herself to operate in a powerful feminine place to attract something of great value. And here comes the sheep. So she's found her innocence, her purity, and her capacity to be gentle in maybe ungentle circumstances. And she knows it's sort of important enough to be of care to this, that she wants to get the sheep out of the tangled net that those men created. See, it's that detail that makes me think this isn't necessarily about scoring a goal in soccer. The beautiful lamb that led to the stunning pile of shit of great value is tangled by the patriarchy, and her feminine presence comes along and rights the situation and is given a gift. And the gift is about the potential of magic, the capacity to birth a new idea, pomegranate's womb. She sees that they're beautiful, right? So there's an immediate recognition of the gift that's been gotten. And so here's where I got really hit by the Adam and Eve story and sort of reforming it is this woman who shows up. Because she's not a friend of Anna's, we know that she's a more aspirational character, like a guide of some sort. And we know she's powerful because she planted the pomegranate tree. So this figure has wisdom and the message of, I ate all the fruit, you don't have to worry. That reminds me of Adam and Eve, where it's like if you eat the fruit, you're cast out. Mm-hmm. That's an old paradigm. That's a patriarchal paradigm. You obey me or I cast you out of my good graces as God. Fucking Christianity is just the fucking worst. What do they call menstruation in some circles? They call it the curse. That's biblical. That comes from a Judeo-Christian patriarchal determination that women are to be subjugated. They are unclean when they're menstruating. I mean, how ridiculously cut off from the power of birthing is the patriarchy when they dismiss that a woman's capacity to be ready for birth is unclean.
Right.
So there's all of these ways that Anna has described the dream with little clues to me that it's very much a part of reworking this paradigm of what it is to connect to the divine. And we need a feminine way to take over because the masculine way just trips us all up. And Anna, I think, is having her own personal experience of finding within her the power and the strength of her feminine gifts as a human being to help change the world as we need it to happen.
Yeah, I love that in the end she says the curse is now broken.
Yeah,
you know?
The curse is now
That's
broken.
Great.
The curse is now broken, and let's hope it's true because we all need this kind of love and capacity to believe in the power of rebirthing ourselves so that we can eventually know peace.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.